I bet you $1 million that you could learn piano, or really any skill in life. Now let me see a show of hands. How many of you guys out there in the audience at some point in your life have wanted to learn piano or some other musical instrument? All right, almost everybody, right? And yet I still hear the comments so often of people saying, Zach, you don't understand, I could never learn music. Say, Zach, you don't understand, my brain just doesn't work that way. I don't have a knack for music. Or Zach, you don't understand, I never took lessons as a kid, and I missed my window, and now it's too late for me. Zach, you don't understand, I could never learn. But I do understand, because I've taught hundreds of students piano, and many who have taught me said those exact same comments. And what I do understand is if you couldn't learn piano or some other skill in life, it's likely you were simply taught in the wrong sequence. And so whenever I hear these comments from people, I proceed to teach them 8 simple notes on piano. That's it, 8 notes. I call it my secret sauce piano pattern, and this one pattern has completely redefined the way I look at teaching and learning, not just piano, but really any skill in life. And it saved my music career 3 times. But first things first, let me show you the pattern. It's my favorite part of the presentation. So for all my music theory nerds out there like me, this is a simple 9th chord arpeggio pattern. But don't worry, if you don't understand music theory, you don't actually have to know music theory to be able to use the pattern. All right, so like I said, 8 simple notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because it's only 8 notes long, you could learn it in 2 to 3 days. And you could spend the rest of the week speeding it up so it sounds something like this. But the big benefit to this specific series of 8 notes is because of the music theory behind it, we can literally take this exact same pattern. I can take my hand, I can lift it up, and I could literally plop it down on any white note on the entire keyboard and play the exact same pattern, and it's always going to sound good, right? So I could play it up here, or I could play the exact same pattern here, or here, here. So now if you just learn 8 notes, you haven't really just learned 8 notes. I tricked you. You've actually learned a ton of different patterns up and down the entire piano keyboard. What's even cooler about this specific pattern, my favorite part, is that this pattern is what's called scalable, which means once you learn this one pattern, you can literally scale it. In other words, you can copy and paste the exact same pattern underneath the melody of almost any song in almost any genre, and it's always going to make the song sound good. Let me show what I mean. You could take the song Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, use the secret sauce pattern, and it's going to sound like this. Thank you. But it doesn't have to be that song. You can literally take any song. We could take Joy to the World, same pattern. Sounds like this. You could take Mary Had a Little Lamb, right? The most boring song in human history on piano. And if you add in the secret sauce pattern, it's going to sound cool. So for this one, first I'm going to show you the traditional way to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb. You've probably heard it before. Sounds something like this. Not exactly tearing up anybody in the audience, I hope. But if you take the exact same song, add the secret sauce pattern, now it's going to sound like this. And like I said, because of the properties of this pattern, right, because I can play it anywhere, because it makes everything sound cool, not only is it motivating and inspiring to learn, but it's literally saved my music career 3 times. Now, the first time, I'm a sophomore in college. My professor comes up to me, he's like, Zach, I heard from your friends that you play piano. Is this true? Now, the truth was, at this point, I'd been learning piano for 2 years off of YouTube, watching YouTube tutorials. But I said, yeah, of course I play piano. He said, great. Exactly. He said, great, my church in Fond du Lac is looking for a piano player. The gig pays $50 a week. Are you in? And all my little college brain in that moment could think of is how many ramen noodles I could buy for $50 a week. By the way, the math is 172 packages if you're curious. So now I was excited, right? I get to play piano, do what I love, and actually make money off of it. How cool is that? But my excitement quickly turned to fear because my professor sent me the music I was supposed to learn. And it was all in sheet music form. Now remember, I was learning off YouTube, so I literally did not know how to read sheet music. So I start freaking out. I'm like, I'm gonna be sitting down at this piano at church. Everybody's gonna be looking at me. It's gonna be embarrassing. I hope they forgive me. But then I realized, Zach, you got the secret sauce pattern. This thing works on everything. And I literally played the entire church service using one left-hand pattern underneath songs like Christ the Lord Has Risen Today. And then I played, O Come All Ye Faithful. And I literally played the entire church service using one left-hand pattern. And I remember I was kind of scared, because I was like, what if they figure out I'm using the same thing on everything? And people came up to me after church and they said, Zach, we loved the way you played. We loved your original renditions of all the songs. It was great. And that moment, believe it or not, that moment in church is a moment that gave me the confidence and the motivation to switch my major from math at the time, which I hated, and switch my major to music, which I was passionate about. But that's when I hit a brick wall, because I didn't realize all the other music majors had 13 years of piano experience. Right? They started off in kindergarten, they played for 13 years through their senior year of high school, and now they're a music major. And I was coming in like, hey guys, 2 years, off of YouTube, what do you think? And at first I thought it was a curse, right? I thought, think how good I would be at piano if I had 13 years of piano experience. But later on I realized it was a blessing, because in those 2 years that I was teaching myself piano, right, I was going on YouTube and looking up tutorials. I was on Google typing in efficient piano practice strategies, right? I was even on these underground nerdy piano forums where I'd be like, hey, does anybody have the fingering for the B-flat harmonic minor scale? Right? And people from all over the world would message me with how they solved their specific problem on piano. And I would try stuff and I would just figure it out. So now I like to say I got lucky, because I really lucked into this perfect storm situation, where on one hand, I had Dr. Ellie Coleman, a world-renowned piano teacher, teaching me the fundamental traditional way to learn piano. But on the other hand, I still had this kind of rogue, ragtag, tried and figured out approach that I'd learned off of YouTube. And when you combine these two ways to learn, it leads to an extremely fast and extremely powerful form of learning. And it's how I developed my method for learning and later on teaching piano. It's how I graduated as one of the top students in the music program. And this leads me to the second time that the secret sauce pattern changed my music career. That's when I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and I started teaching piano lessons. And very early on, I developed a reputation as someone who could help you learn faster, right? Someone who could really 80-20 rule your practicing, narrow in on what's efficient and what's working, and help get you there faster. But I had one big problem. My big problem was adult students. And not for the reason, by the way, that everybody always says, right? Not because adults' brains learn slower, or kids' brains are like sponges, and adults' brains can't soak up information. None of that was true. In fact, my adults that actually practiced learned faster than my kids, right? Because I didn't have to make everything into a fun game for them. They would just practice, and I could just tell them what to do. But the problem was, I could not get 90% of my adult students to just sit down at the piano and actually practice. So As I was going through my notes, I'm trying to figure out why some people become consistent practitioners and lifelong learners and why others don't. I'm going through my notes, and a pattern starts to emerge. And I start to figure out something that I now call the launch point. Now, the launch point is a point about 90 days, about 3 months into learning. And if I can get an adult student to practice consistently for 90 days, something starts to click, and they hit this launch point. Because once something starts to click, and they start getting these results, they start feeling more motivated. Once they feel more motivated, then they practice more. Once they practice more, they get even more results. Once they get more results, they get even more motivation. It leads to this upward positive motivational loop. But if I can't get somebody to this 90-day launch point, oftentimes they quit piano and never take music lessons again. So at this point, it became my goal, my mission really, to get as many of these adult students to this 90-day launch point as humanly possible. And I tried a lot of different motivational strategies. Right? I tried doing practice charts. I tried giving people, discounts on lessons. I tried being the annoying texting person like, hey, did you practice today? Maybe sit down at the old piano, start practicing. And yet nothing was working. I'm scratching my head and I'm thinking, how can I get these people to practice? And so I start thinking back to, okay, Zach, how did you get yourself to practice back when you were just some dude learning off YouTube? And that's when it hit me. It was the secret sauce pattern all along. Because once I could play the secret sauce pattern, I could play songs I was actually passionate about. Right? I could play for my friends and my family, my church. They would come up and say, wow, you can play piano? That's what got me motivated. That's what got me excited to practice. Now, the traditional way of teaching piano, or really any skill in life, is what do you learn first? You learn the boring but important fundamentals, right? And then months, maybe even years later, now you get to learn the fun stuff. But I thought, okay, what if we flip that equation on its head just a little bit? What if we teach a little bit of the fun stuff first, get people excited, get them motivated, and then we can go back and we can teach the boring but important fundamentals. So I started teaching the secret sauce pattern early on to adult students. And it worked. Suddenly adults would come into lessons, they'd say, Zach, I played the pattern for my niece, she loved it. But the next question is the important part. They would ask me, Zach, but I don't understand, why do these series of 8 notes always work no matter where you play them on the keyboard? You know what they're asking me? They were asking me to teach them the music theory behind the pattern, right? The boring fundamentals that I used to have to force feed to people, they were excited about it. And it made my job as a teacher and their job as a student 100 times easier. And this leads me to the third time that the secret sauce pattern completely changed my music career. That's when I thought, secret sauce thing's working. I'd learned off of YouTube way back in the day. Why couldn't anybody learn off YouTube? So I hopped over to Best Buy, got one of those little flip cams, this is before the day of smartphones, put it up on a tripod, and recorded a video lesson detailing exactly how to do the secret sauce pattern. I put it up on YouTube. I forgot about it for 2 to 3 months. And I remember I checked back later, 2 to 3 months later, and I couldn't believe it. Because the video had hundreds of thousands of views. I remember I thought it was a glitch. I'm like refreshing the page. I called my mom, like, Mom, check your computer. How many views does it say on your screen? Really? 100,000? But what was more exciting to me than the views was the comments I was getting. Because I was getting people saying, Zach, I learned this thing in 2 days. Zach, this motivated me to play piano again. Can you upload more of these tutorials? So I continue to upload more and more of these videos to YouTube until nowadays I actually make a living teaching piano on YouTube. And again, I feel like I fell into this very lucky and unique situation, right? Where on one hand, I had to learn how to teach and motivate people in person, face-to-face. But then I also had to learn, okay, how do we transition that teaching into online video content and have it still work? Now, as you probably already know, right, the bigger and bigger the internet gets, the more and more technology we have, the more and more of teaching and learning is going to be done online through video content. Or you've probably already learned something off of YouTube, off of Google, off an online course. And as we move into this new age of online learning, there's a lot of lessons that I learned along the way when I had to transfer my material. But the biggest lesson, by far the biggest lesson, is that information is no longer the issue. And we're still treating it like it is. Right? Information used to be the bottleneck. Right? You'd go to a class because what? You need the information from the teacher. Or you'd open up a book because you need the information from the book. But nowadays, whether you want to learn ballroom dancing, whether you want to learn Spanish, whether you want to learn piano, right? All the information you need is right there at your fingertips on Google and Facebook and YouTube and online courses and forums and blog posts. Information is no longer the issue. So what's the issue now? Well, as you probably already know, the issue is motivation. Right? The issue is getting someone to take out those Spanish flashcards and actually start studying. The issue is getting someone to lace up their shoes and go to the gym. The issue is getting someone to sit down at the piano and actually practice. And in this new age of learning, we need to start prioritizing motivation over information. And the first step to doing that is to finding the secret sauce in whatever you're learning or whatever you're teaching. Right? Find something early on in the learning process that's easy enough for a beginner to learn, but still cool and exciting enough to get someone motivated, get them inspired, get them confident. And not just for piano, right? If you're teaching somebody, how to cook, don't start off with the fundamentals of cooking, right? First, find that recipe that's 3 ingredients, but when you pull it out of the oven, it looks like it came from a 5-star restaurant, right? And they can feed their friends and their family. They can say, wow, you cook this? When did you learn how to cook? Can you teach me? Get them excited, right? Give them the motivation first, and then give them the information. Find the secret sauce to whatever you're learning or whatever you're teaching. And by the way, once you do find the secret sauce, make sure you shoot me an email. Let me know what it is. And then I'll send you my address, and I'll be waiting on my $1 million check. Thank you guys very much.